So guys, welcome to our live workshop about a graduated bob. A graduated bob we're gonna do today or tonight, depends where you are from, on a real life model. And I have to thank you, Svantje, for taking her time that I can demonstrate this nice salon most wanted haircut for you on a real life model. Most of you know me that I work very often on manicures, and I prefer working on manicures for very artistic haircuttings, but in some cases it's necessary to demonstrate and show you how you can work on a real model. And maybe you took a look on my story today and you saw that we did a little bit in hair coloring for Svantje. And now we're starting to cut this pretty nice graduated form. If you take a closer look to the separation I did in advance, you can see it's a little bit different than you normally do. Most of you doing the cross pardoning for this kind of haircut. But if you take a look at this, you see this different starting point, because we do it all with vertical finger position. So at the end, it's not a haircut which is totally basic haircutting. It's a haircut which is a little bit more artistic in finger position, and in the result, it's much softer than a classic graduated A-line bob, for example. It will be softer in the crown, in the swill area, and in the nape as well. So this is enough talking, so now we're gonna start with the haircut. So I ask Svantje if she can stand up a little bit. Because when I start cutting the nape area, it is important that I can...
Could you maybe speak just a little bit louder?
Okay, I try to speak a little bit louder, somebody requests. So we're gonna start with vertical sections in the middle of the nape. This is the first section we're gonna do. And you split the hair here, you comb it away, and now I go back, just a second, and I go back on the side position. And if you do a little step forward, it's much, yeah, so, okay, perfect. And I put the head a little bit downwards. And now I start doing the graduation in the middle of the nape area with a vertical finger position and to comb the hair in a 45 degrees angle. For your understanding, this one would be a no angle, and if you comb the hair in that way, this is a 90 degrees angle. The 45 degrees finger position is the right one. And now I cut off the length and start moving with my scissors, following my fingers. Now I start from one side, moving to the ear area, and I'm still continuing combing the hair in this 45 degrees finger position. For you, what's important, you do not follow the roundness of the head. You comb the hair to your position so that you get an increase in length through the ear area. Take a careful look at your guideline and do not cut it a second time. I comb away half of the last section. The other half of the section will help me to continuing with the right length. If you want to do such a haircut, one tip from my side. I definitely work always with a finger position where the tips of my finger going on the on the roof. So that means they show upwards. Maybe some of you will do this way, this haircut with such a finger position. I would recommend turn it around, comb it that way, and you have much more control about the weightness on both sides. Because it should be a strong symmetry in the nape area. So this will help you a lot.
We have first questions. Do you always put the model in that position when you're making this haircut?
Yeah. If I do this haircut in salon, the model is sitting on her chair and I'm sitting on the chair as well. But for this, when I do this live video, it's important that I'm on the same level with my eyes when I do the cutting. So that means when both of us sit, you can do it if you have a chair. But if you stand, then everybody has to stand. Otherwise you're losing control about the length.
And the second question is, what is your position, finger positioning if you are left-handed? How do you manage it?
There's no difference. If you are left-handed, you use the same position. I will show you when I cut the other side that I definitely have the same finger position. So give me just a few minutes to finalize this side, and then you see there's no difference. So I comb the hair always from the outside in direction to the middle of the nape. This is important, and so you see that the increase of length is very strong, because behind the ear we need more length. Now I turn her around. I go a little bit in that way, and then I go to the other side. And I do exactly the same, and I still have the same finger position. This gives me a maximum control about the length. You see, I split the parting. I already cut, and I use half of it as a guideline for my next section. And the rest I comb away, because this is a mobile technique. It's not a technique you comb all the hair through the nape. In this case, your length increase through the ear is too much. You will have too much weight behind the ear. So you move with your fingers around the head, but you do not follow the shape of the head. That means when you cut the hair behind the ear, you put it in this direction. You do not follow it, because otherwise you have a hole behind the ear afterwards. This is a haircut which is inspired by the late 90s, because that was a decade where we had very soft bob haircuts. And this rounded shape, you will see that later on when I present the pictures of the result. They are very soft. It's different than a classical graduated bob. But it's still one of the most wanted haircuts in salon. So if you did that, you're going to do a cross check, and Diana, can you please give me the water bottle? And take care that the wetness of the hair is still the same all the time. As you may see, if you may see, we did highlights and we used a bleaching technique for this. So if you have this, it's more important that the hair is wet when you're gonna cut it. And if I'm done with the graduated form in the nape, I'm making the outer line. I check it with all the swill areas. Turn around a little bit. Big one.
From how many degrees from the skin do you take the plaques?
I did not understand.
From how many degrees from the skin do you take the plaques?
45 degrees. So now I move ahead with the second pardoning, and I still continue starting in the middle of the nape area. Now we are behind the swill, and I use a clip just for you that you can better see what I'm going to do. I take a little hair from the first section and I comb it in the 45 degrees, and now to get this rounded shape and this very soft result, it's important that you lift the hair a little bit more than 45 degrees. If you want, you can say maybe 55 degrees, but it doesn't matter if it's 50 or 55 or 60. For you, it's important that you know that you lift it up a little bit higher, that you do not create too much heaviness under the swill area. Take control about the lengths you follow. You take it from the nape area, you move the hair, you hold it a little bit in a higher angle, and you do the same technique. And if you did this, if you do the first section afterwards, check your result. That's a very easy trick to see if it's the right angle, or if it's maybe too much heaviness, or if it's too light. So if you only cut this small section, you can do some changes if you want. But this helps you a lot. So for me, it's perfect. It's what I want to get is in my results. So I move ahead with the same technique, and I use these clips for you guys that you can better see what I'm going to do. And don't miss your guideline from the nape area, because you need it all the time. Otherwise, you get a break inside your graduation, and this is really not good, and you have to make corrections. And I'm continuing combing the hair from the outside to have maximum control about the result. Next section. Still using my clip. I'm continuing using this mobile technique, which means I take half of the section I cut before and take the other half as a guideline for my next section. And now I reach the area behind the ear. And we have a change in technique here. I will explain to you in just a second.
What is the difference between horizontal and vertical in your cut?
If you do this haircut with horizontal sections, you will have a lot of steps inside that. The result with vertical sections is much softer. You will see it when we do the blow drying later on, and you see the final result. You will see this softness and this movement of the hair is much more than horizontal with a horizontal techniques. So now I work through the ear, and this is my last section behind the ear. What happens now is the head, the shape of the head is finished here, and I comb all the hair backwards in this position, because the head is not going wider in this direction, so I do not following around the shape of the head. I comb it backwards to my last section behind the ear. That guarantees me enough length and enough weightness for the contour line. You will see that. My last section behind the ear, I comb it backwards. Oops. I'm still continuing with vertical sections. Comb the hair backwards to your last section and cut it on your guideline. I hold the comb between my fingers and I come from the top and go down and comb it backwards in this technique. This makes it a little bit easier for you, because maybe for most of you this technique is not so familiar. Maybe you have to train that a little bit. Most of you will be used by working in this direction. But this has a lot of risk, because you follow the shape of the head, and this means that you have not enough length behind the ear. So what I'm going to do now, I comb the hair in the natural fall. You see the diagonal outer line, and the only thing I have to do now is make it a little bit more solid. remove the fine ends and take care that the length around the ear is still solid as the nape. Just another tip from my side, if you have bleached hair, and Swantje's hair got some more bleachings, and that means it's a good idea when you do the blow drying afterwards, you check this contour line again. This is a tip from my side. So now I move to the other side. But before I start with that, I would like to ask you if you see we have a new background, because today it's a very special moment for me, because we are now working the first time in our new academy, and maybe most of you know this gray background we had normally, but today we have a new academy, and we decided for the first time, just for the first time, and then we checked the result, to use the regular wall, like we do it in our seminars as well. So you get an idea how our new academy is looking like. So, okay, I go to the other side. Start combing the hair, continuing with vertical sections, and you keep in mind that the angle is a little bit higher than 45 degrees. I see my guideline, which I used for the other side, and I follow and move in the other direction. And I still continuing combing the hair from the outside through the inside, to take a maximum control about the increase in length through the area behind the ear. And if you try this kind of haircut, you will see the second side, which I'm working now, it's much easier than the other side. Because all of us, the right-handed people, are used to working with such a finger position.
Could you maybe share a few informations about the academy or things that you are educating, making seminars also here? So where can they find some information?
If you want to have further information, I will give you some when the haircut is done. I will focus now more or less on the haircut, so that I can explain and answering all the questions you have, and all these questions around beside the haircut I try to answer later on, okay? So, the cutting angle is a little bit higher than 45 degrees. I am checking my guideline. I follow the shape of the head. So step by step, we're moving ahead through the area behind the ear. And I hope you have in mind what happens there. You will see it soon, because the same, what happens on the other side, will be here on this side as well. But I need one more section. So this is the last one. I comb away the hair, I already cut it. I'm taking a little guideline, and just for you, if you have to take care that you have the right guideline, you can use your scissor if you could not find it and lift the hair you want to cut a little bit off, and then you see your exact guideline underneath. So this is the last section, and what I change now is from a mobile workflow to a stationary workflow. It's the same what I did on the other side. I still continue with combing the hair at vertical, comb it backwards, but I stop moving with my fingers around the head shape. I'm still fixed in this position, and I comb all the hair backwards to this position. That means it's a stationary technique. But take care that your angle, your finger position is still higher than 45 degrees. One of the biggest mistakes is that you're getting lower and lower and lower. That means you have more heaviness on the side. And this is definitely not what I want to create. So, I'm still having under control that the combing angle is higher than 45 degrees.
Would you cross-check it horizontally?
Of course, to cross-check it horizontally is a possibility. But to be honest, what I really do is when I'm done with it, I comb it, I check the movement of the hair, and if there are small mistakes, I do this after the blow drying. I will show you later on a pretty nice technique where you can check it. It's much more effective instead of do a horizontal cross-check, because a horizontal cross-check has a kind of a dangerous in itself, because if your mistakes are too big, you make steps inside this soft area, and this does not look good. So my recommendation for you is cut it as carefully as possible. Make a visual check if the weightness and the symmetry is still there, and then do the blow drying and make the final cutting when the hair is dry, especially when you have highlighted or bleached hair, because the quality of the hair is much different, and some hair is stronger, another one is limp, so it's better to check this when it's dry.
And is it possible for you to explain slice cut?
Yeah, slice cut I can explain, and I will do this when I do my dry cutting later on. So the plan for today is to let you know how our structure will be. We do the wet cutting now, and then we do a little break. I will do the blow drying. Maybe the break will be about 25 minutes, and then I will show you the dry cutting. Then we come back live, because the blow drying is pretty boring for you, so it's not necessary, so you can make a break. And then, if you want, you can see how I do the dry cutting. I think that's a good compromise, or? So, I comb the hair, I check the waveness and the length, and same as on the other side, I comb the hair in the natural fall, and do a first check on the contour line. Okay, thank you, Swantje. That was a long time to stand, so you can take a seat here. But we go exactly in the position we had in advance. So I hope everybody can see it. Thanks a lot to Diana. She's always checking the camera position and also let me know all the questions you have. And I try to answer most of them. And just for you to know, if maybe somebody has a question I cannot answer, so you have all a possibility to send me direct messages. I promise, I answer everything when somebody is asking. I send you graphics or tutorials if you have further questions, so that's not the point. If I'm not able to answer your question today, so I do it, I promise, tomorrow. So, now I separate the hair and I comb away the forehead area and continuing my soft graduation in the nape. So what we need now, a little bit water. I hope you have in mind, especially for bleached hair, we need to have the same wetness all the time. And now I'm continuing with the same vertical sections here. It's totally the same. And what I do now is I increase the combing angle one more time. I check my guideline from the nape area. I comb it out horizontally. And I follow with my fingers the shape of the head. So that means I'm creating a softer graduation than a classical A-line bob. That means I create more movement and more volume for the swivel area. I posted in my story the graphics of the haircut we're gonna do today. And maybe you have the time to take a closer look later on, and then you will see in the structured graphic what happens with the angles. And now you can understand the difference in my thinking, in my creating this haircut between this very soft graduated bob compared to a classical graduated bob. If you take a look to a classical graduated bob, the heaviness in this area is more, and the difference in this haircut is we have it lighter. It's the opposite at the end. And this is what it makes this haircut so interesting. And this kind of a graduated bob became a big comeback. After years, we all did very classical graduated forms. The first time I trained this haircut by my personal trainer was, I think, in the late 90s. And then it was gone for many, many years, but now it's back in fashion again.
Could you repeat one more time about degrees for the upper part for cutting?
Yeah, I can repeat the cutting angle. So what I explained in the middle section was this was a 45 degrees, and I said we lift it up a little bit in a 55 maybe. It's not important if it's 55 or 60, a little bit higher than 45. What we're going to do now is we comb the hair horizontally. That means we comb it out this way. My comb show you the direction, how I comb it, and then take a closer look at my fingers. the horizontal position, the horizontal combing, and now I follow my fingers and I lift it up a little bit more to the crown to give it lots of lightness. You see, at the end, my finger position is like that. In the beginning, it was like that. So I have a soft movement with my finger position. So I go back to my guideline. I'm still using vertical sections. So this is the last one, which gives the connection to the hair in the side area. If I turn her around a little bit, you see the softness and the light length, we have it here. And this is exactly what we want to create. No heavy, no strong lines in this soft graduated bob. I go back to my starting position and I'm continuing with vertical sections.
Do you cut graduated bob the same as bob layer?
A layered bob is a little bit more different, but in the end, if you speak about a layered bob, it's very often a soft graduated bob. That happens. The difference is very small and sometimes hard to see. To cut a layered bob means you need a lot of more length in this chin area. You need more hair here, then you can really create layers. So at the end, when you see the final result, maybe some of you will say it's a layered bob, but as you can see, all the techniques I'm going to use are graduated techniques. But this round graduated techniques gives you the idea or the feeling it's a layered bob. But if craftsmen talk to each other, we should talk technically correct. And technically correct is that we have here a soft graduated bob. So I go step by step to the area behind the ear, continuing with the two-dimensional vertical sections, lift it up, following the shape of the head. And as you can see, Svantje has really a lot of hair. And she asked me, before we started, that she wants to have more lightness in her haircut. So when we are done with the blow drying and we're coming back to the dry cutting session, I will show you a very, very interesting technique to use weight and thickness in this area and to make the hair smoother and more thin, and which gives the face a final shape. So it will be interesting later on, so it's necessary that you come back. So, last section.
Are you using the stable guide to cut the top section for your cutting?
Stable guide.
table guide.
No, I'm still working in a mobile technique. The stationary position I only have in this area behind the ear. The whole head, the whole back head is always cut mobile, in a mobile technique. Good. What we're gonna do now is the fringe area. And we do a little layering there. And what's necessary from the beginning is that we do the side parting. And let me explain you a few more words about side parting. If you ask your client in salon, where do you put your side parting? Most of them will explain you that they do it this way, more or less straight on the same side. If you cut it in that way, you will always have trouble, especially when you do a graduated bob. You will always have trouble with this crown area because you have too much length, and if the wind comes from the wrong side, you will have overlays on the smaller side, and this does really not look good. So I can recommend you a solution for that. I have two kinds of side partingings. I have the blow drying side parting. That's what my client says. That's where her side parting is. And I have the cutting ones. For cutting, I ask my client, where do you put the side parting? Normally it's here in this position, in the middle of the eyebrows, vertical, starting from this position. And for the cutting, I always do it diagonal to the highest point of the head. That gives my layers a symmetry in the back of the head. Then keep in mind, if you have an asymmetrical front area and a symmetry in the nape area, you need to cut a connection between both. And if you do the side parting like this, you always come in trouble with this connection. So, do the side parting diagonal from the beginning of the side part, going to the highest point of the head, and you're totally safe. So I comb the hair away. We only do a little layering, and maybe some of you watched my last Instagram live about the curtain bang reverse layers, and then you may remember this technique. It's a very classical layering technique which starts with a 45 degrees parting with a parallel finger position, and it's a stationary technique. I comb the hair away from the top of the head through my guideline and the front area. And I do a small layered sector around the face. And I do this as long as no hair comes to my guideline. Let's see. Only, a little bit. I cut this off. And all the other hair are too short to reach my guideline. That means I'm done with these layers on this side. And what I'm going to do now is I'm taking a little bit, only a little bit from the first side, take it to the other side, and I do the same technique, having the guideline from the first side, and I do the same technique on the other side as well. Very important is the finger position. You see it here. It's diagonal parting, and it's a diagonal finger position. One of the biggest mistakes you can do is choose a vertical finger position. That means you will cut off the length here in the chin area, and this is really, really bad. It gives you a very round shape. So this does not look so good. So we take more hair have control, we still have control about the guideline, and we're taking care that we have a diagonal finger position, that we create longer lengths here to make sure that this area will not be too short later on. Next section. And I think this will be the last one. So, that's it. Now we have a little layering around the face. The fringe area is not too heavy, but that's the important point. We still have the weightness in this area, so the bob is still there. The last step in dry cutting is connecting these two techniques, the layers around the face and the soft graduation in the nape area. Turn you around, and then you see you have only a few tips here. And what I'm gonna do now is cut this off so that connection between both techniques is still very soft. So guys, this is what the wet cutting was. And like I explained you a few minutes ago, we now do a little blow drying, a little flat ironing, Svantje's hair, and then we came back, and then I have a really high interesting technique for you, especially if you have clients with very thick hair, wants to have it smoother on the side. So I promise this will be a very great idea for you, and I'm sure some of you will take this idea and try it and on your clients as well. So give us just maybe 25, maybe a few minutes more, and then we back live. And you can see first what the wet cutting result is, as well as the dry cutting effects I want to create. So, one last sections, that's it. Okay guys, so far so good. I hope to see you later in a few minutes. We are back.